So I find it pretty ironic that this guitar is coming to me from a client for service now, and that I'm getting to review this today, especially on the heels of my Fender Jaguar ranking list, because I was pretty unforgiving of this based on the ones that I had seen over the past decade or so. But today we are going to be taking a look at the Kurt Cobain Signature Fender Jaguar. So as I just mentioned, especially for the price, I wasn't very forgiving of the flaws that I've seen on most of the examples of the Kurt Cobain Signature Jaguar that I have seen since its release back in 2014. I'm talking specifically about the Made in Mexico version, and not the limited edition ones that came out in the early 2000s that were made in Japan. And the main reason why I didn't give it such a high score was because of the fact that over the half dozen or so that I have seen over the years, the majority of them came to me with neck issues that required the client to end up spending much more money on an already expensive guitar. Today in 2026, this guitar retails for $19.99, so over $2,000 once you consider taxes, if you pay sales tax where you are, and that is crazy expensive for a made in Mexico guitar. Now, I am happy to report that of all of the ones that I have seen and worked on and played over the years, this one that I have here in my hands right now is the best playing example that I've had of all of them, almost strikingly so. Again, I find it really, really ironic, especially because of what I said in that ranking. So today, I think I'm going to be able to give a more objective review of the Kurt Cobain Signature Jaguar. We're going to play it, test it out through the Princeton Reverb reissue, and in the end, I'm going to let you know whether I think this one is worth picking up, whether it's worth your money, especially at $2,000. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So this is based on the Jaguar that Kurt picked up secondhand through the LA Recycler, which I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds like it was some sort of print classifieds tabloid, kind of like a print version of Craigslist before Craigslist existed. There's a lot of mystery surrounding the origins of this guitar because it was already built the way that you see here by the previous owner. Is never been kind of confirmed who that previous owner was, especially because this original 1965 Fender Jaguar that had been heavily modified by that previous owner prior to Kurt owning it, had supposedly had it inside of a flight case, which was typically reserved for touring musicians at the time. And it also had this like custom made neck, which was pretty correct for 1965 overall. Unsure whether the headstock had been reshaped to a Strat shape or whether it was a custom order through Fender, down to honestly the decal. This decal with the smaller Jaguar logo on it, all of those things, all of the mods that had been done here had been done by the previous owner prior to Kurt. And I definitely am going to be the first to admit that I am no expert on the lore on Kurt Cobain's original 1965 Jaguar on which this is based. So feel free to comment down below if I got any of those details wrong. Now continuing, we have an alder body on this, along with a gloss polyester finish, three-tone sunburst here, very, very nice. Now for the neck, we've got this bound short scale Jaguar neck with a Strat headstock. Again, a mystery on how it ended up that way on Kurt's original. It does have pearloid dot inlays and a 9.5-inch radius with medium jumbo frets. Now, unlike most of the 1965 Jaguars that I have played, this one has quite a slimmer profile, a modern C profile, and I measured here with the calipers that this one is 0.83 at the first fret and 0.87 at the 12th fret. So pretty slim overall, especially as compared to, for example, the American Vintage 65 reissue that I've got back there, where we've got almost a full inch up here at the 12th. The Kurt Cobain Jaguar neck also features a 1 5/8 inch nut width, which is pretty common of actual vintage 1965 Jaguars, but a tiny, tiny bit narrower than the standard 1.65 inch or 42 millimeter nut width found on most fenders these days. Now for tuners, this does also feature Goto cast sealed tuners. They are not the split post kind that we are used to on our fenders. This one does have the string through type posts. Now, I don't know what specific model Goto tuners these ones are, but I can say that they are high quality every single time I've tried them out on this model. And you can also see here that they did replicate the old holes left behind by the Kluson style tuners, or the Kluson tuners that would have originally been featured on a 1965 Jaguar neck. One final thing about the neck, aside from the fact that it does feature this nice dark rosewood fretboard on this example, is the fact that it does feature a synthetic bone nut instead of a real bone nut. Now moving on to our hardware, we do have a Fender Jaguar tremolo or vibrato unit, basically identical to what had come on the classic player, Jaguar and Jazzmaster, as well as the Vintero 1. So these do have that screw-in arm, which I overall am not a fan of, but the annoyances and gripes that I have with this arm overall are easily solved with just a thin line of Loctite 222 purple down the threads of it. It gets rid of the squeak, it gets rid of the floppiness that you have with this arm. So overall, it becomes a non-issue so long as you do something to address those inherent flaws with it. And because it is a vintage style tremolo, aside from that, it does also feature the trem lock button. Now for the bridge, we have a Goto made adjust-o-matic bridge. This has a 12-inch radius, which is a mismatch to the 9.5-inch radius of the fretboard here. One of the many reasons I am not a fan of adjust-o-matic or tune-o-matic bridges on offset guitars is because of that mismatch, and because overall I really do not like how these play with the tremolo unit here. The V-cut or the V-shaped grooves are just not ideal for tremolo use, and especially because from the factory, this one came with like a bit of sandpaper as a shim in the neck pocket. The tune-o-matic bridge in this instance, or the adjust-o-matic bridge, is sitting a bit higher than I personally would like here, but it does ring out nicely, and my client here doesn't really use the tremolo arm very much on this guitar. This adjust-o-matic bridge, because the actual posts on which it stands on were quite loose, easy to kind of rock, and would sometimes contribute to a bit of noise, especially when engaging the vibrato unit. So I hit those as well as the saddle screws with a bit of that Loctite 222 as well. Everything is still easily adjustable, but it just keeps everything from being loose and kind of rattly and stuff, and just makes the overall hardware situation here much more robust and stable. Now moving on to our electronics, it's very easy to see that this is not just your standard Jaguar. First of all, we've got a 36th anniversary DiMarzio PAF for the neck pickup. If you're unfamiliar with this pickup, it is moderately low output, like low magnetic strength. That is one of the things that DiMarzio specifies on their website, hoping that this would offer a bit more clarity and also top end, almost like a single coil, but in a humbucker form factor. And then for our bridge, we've got the famous super distortion, which is a lot higher of an output. This is about 13 to 14K output for the super distortion, and about 7K or so for the neck pickup. We also have, instead of our 3 independent switches, we've got a 3-way toggle here to select your bridge, both pickups in parallel, and then your neck pickup. And we also have the ability to blend these when you have both pickups selected, because this does have 2 independent volume controls, for one for your neck and one for your bridge. And then we've also got your tone control, which affects everything. You can also see that, like Kurt's original, that there is some gaff tape or something to block out that last slot where there is no switch. but that is cool because you can easily add a strangle back in here if you wanted to mod it. And then up here we have our standard rhythm circuit, which my client here had brought to me. One of the reasons he brought this to me for service was because this switch needed to be replaced. He uses it very often as a kill switch by turning just the volume and tone all the way down over here, and he had worn it out after many years of touring and stuff, so that needed to be replaced on this guitar. And one other additional detail is that this does have a pretty unique looking neck plate on it. I do not know if that's the way that it looked on the one that Kurt acquired back in 1991, but yeah, unique to this model, so very cool. For some reason, reminds me, the font here reminds me of something surf related, right? And also, on top of it, this does come with one of the classic series wood cases, very reminiscent of the old G&G cases that used to come with the American Vintage series, just a little bit lower in quality overall. It's the same case that comes with like the Troy Van Leeuwen and the Vintera 2 Road-Worn Jazzmaster and such. Now, just some impressions. Again, now that I finally after 6 or 7 tries, finally have an example that didn't need that much work overall to be playing nicely. It needed a basic setup at most, and after a basic setup, after being strung up with some DiMarzio New York XLs or NYXLs, 11 to 52 gauge strings, it just feels really nice. I really do like, and I'd always said, if it didn't have issues, that the Kurt Cobain Jaguar has a really nice neck to it. I really dig this slimmer modern C profile on this, especially because for more than a decade, I feel like Fender on a lot of their Jaguars has been going with a much thicker neck profile. I dig the thinness and the fast feeling that we get on this neck. I mostly am a vintage fret size kind of guy with a 7 1/4 radius as my favorite specs, but I find the 9.5-inch radius here and the medium jumbo frets, especially because unlike most of those Kurt Cobain Jaguars that I've had in the past, this one really did not need, after a setup, that much fret work. After testing with the fret rocker, the amount of high frets on this particular example were fairly minimal overall, which is really, really nice to see. And again, a stark contrast to most of the ones that I had worked on prior, and just feels really, really nice. Now, as far as the electronics and switching go, I will reserve my thoughts for that after freshly playing through it again. And so now we are going to be plugging it into the old Princeton Reverb Reissue. And later on, we are going to test it out through my newly built JHS Notadumble V2. I might have a video on the build process for this and more kind of sound demos with this in the future, but it's a really cool Dumble style pedal. So we're going to be using that for the distortion backslash overdrive that we're going to be doing today to hear especially what this pickup combination sounds like through it. So let's go ahead and plug this bad boy in and see what it sounds like. All right, now we're plugged into the old Princeton Reverb Reissue. The volume is set to 5. Bass and treble are also right in the middle at 5. Starting off with our bridge pickup here, our DiMarzio Super Distortion. That's crazy. Yeah, there definitely is a lot of output on that pickup because most of these single coils, vintage spec single coils that I play through this will still be fairly clean when the amp is set to 5, but this one has those tubes cooking. All right, now we've got both pickups together in parallel here. Nice. A little bit more palatable, a little bit more my taste there. And then now we are doing our neck pickup, that 36th anniversary DiMarzio PAF. Cool. overall, again, I admittedly am not a humbucker guy, and the neck pickup here is my favorite tone that we have heard so far. It sounds the most clear to me, which is ironic, especially because on most Jaguars, the neck pickup is the darkest tone that you will get. But in this instance, it sounds the most clear to me and the most articulate here, likely because of that lower output, right? All right, we're moving now to our rhythm circuit. That is the neck pickup only, but darker. Cool. All right, so we're gonna go back now to our super distortion. We're gonna turn on the Dumble now. I've got the drive pretty much at 5 here and turning the volume a bit down. And then I've got my EQ set to 6.5 or so. And I've got the presence also set to about 6.5. Okay. So yeah, that is definitely where the magic of the super distortion is. You get that searing sound, that extra output that you are getting is the reason why most folks go with humbuckers. Is just a single coil is not going to hit this pedal in the same way as immediately as these pickups are making it happen. So really, really nice. Let's try both pickups together in parallel. All right, we're going to turn the presence up a little bit on our Notadumble V2, and then we're also going to kick up the boost channel here a bit. All right, and then now our rhythm circuit. All right, we're gonna turn the Notadumble off. I really dig the Notadumble. That's really my first kind of foray into recording with it. I haven't had much of a chance to play with it, but I definitely think it is a hell of a value, especially I think I paid what, $100 or 129 or something for this thing. A really, really nice transparent overdrive that definitely cooks, especially when paired with some higher output humbuckers here. I find that it has a bit more on tap definitely than the Klon clones that I have here, and I'd say on par, if not a bit more color to it, to my ears than my Timmy V2, which is my go-to overdrive. So, all right, so let's go back to doing some clean. We're gonna start now with our neck pickup. Now, both pickups in parallel, but we're going to do a little bit of a blend here. This is what it sounds like when they're equal. Now we're going to turn the bridge pickup a bit down. All right, and then lastly, we'll do our bridge pickup one more time. We've turned it down to about 75% to give you an idea that it does clean up a bit. All right, so there it is, the Kurt Cobain Signature Jaguar, my friends. I've got to say, this one definitely left me with a way more favorable impression than all of the other ones that I have in the past. The ones that gave me so much grief, especially as a result of the work that had to go into their necks. It's not to say that those ones didn't play well after the fact, but it was just kind of, my ranking was based on you potentially paying $2,000 for one of these and then having to do more work to them. It just isn't right, in my personal opinion. This one here, unlike those, also didn't really exhibit really any fret sprout along the edge here, and the fretwork on this one, again, was just done in such a way that is in stark contrast to all the other ones I had. So yeah, 2019, maybe that is maybe that is the magic year where they really put some good work into these Cobain signatures. Now, in keeping with what I said in my ranking of this guitar in that that tier list video that I did on Jags, I still have to say that you know, humbuckers are just not my favorite. This just sounds way too dark for me to sound like a proper Jag. I did feel like it excelled when using distortion here. Obviously, the main use case for wanting to go with humbuckers, while this super distortion cleaned up a bit, you know, turning down the volume knob, it still was not the ideal sound for me personally that I want through a good Jaguar bridge pickup. And I did quite like the PAF humbucker. It's not that I have never had humbuckers on guitars before. I've had PAFs in my SGs and my 335s and such. And in those contexts, I feel like maybe because I'm expecting that sound more, and in the context of a Jag, it's just not something that I'm used to. But I did like the articulation and overall tone of the 36th anniversary DiMarzio PAF more than the super distortion here. Now, the additional bells and whistles that are specific features to the Kurt Cobain Signature are things that I can take or leave, you know. As far as the three-way toggle, yes, it's a more streamlined switching configuration, not as confusing to folks who have never played a Jaguar. And I do like the fact that this is not something, because the orientation of the switch is horizontal here, it's not something that you're accidentally going to end up turning off your pickups in the middle of like a set or a performance. So that is one nice thing. I wish it is still, especially with the humbuckers, wish it still had the strangle switch. I feel like it could make some of the tones here a bit more usable, a bit more articulate and clear. So that is a sad omission on this model. The independent volume controls for the pickups is nice. But do I need it, especially in the context of these two specific pickups? No, I don't think so. I didn't feel like I really gained anything from being able to turn the volume down on the bridge pickup, for example. Just overall, especially when playing clean, sounded a bit muddy to me. And then the rhythm circuit just made things a bit darker. But yeah, again, the neck pickup for me was the most usable on this. The highlight for me on this guitar really is the neck, this modern C profile, the 1 5/8 inch nut width. It does feel like a good vintage Jag to me, albeit not the 65 that this is supposedly referencing. More along the lines of, I'd say, an early 60s, like a 1962 or 63 Jag. And in that, especially if you get a good one that does not have any issues, no sharp frets, no wavy fretboard and such, you'll find that the necks on these feel really, really good. And the only other thing really that I would probably swap out is maybe swap this vibrato unit out for a you know, an AVRI unit. Those are definitely going to feel a bit smoother. This one feels stiff, even with the fix that we had done to the squeaky screw-in vibrato arm here. You could play around with different springs to give that a bit more responsiveness and such, or replace that altogether with like a stay trem collet and arm, or one of my favorite, which is actually ironically a screw-in arm, the Offset Guitars UK collet and arm. You get an extra long arm there, and I swear I could not tell, especially because of the tight tolerances and really precise machining that they did on those, and the fact that the Offset Guitars UK at the bottom also does have a bit of a nylon sleeve down there that the threads thread into, just makes for what feels like a damn good, smooth, vintage style pop-in arm, despite being a screw-in. But if you're in the market for a premium tremolo arm and collet upgrade, definitely check out the Offset Guitars UK one. It's awesome. Now, do I recommend this guitar? At $2,000, this is really, really hard for me to recommend. You have to be a serious Kurt Cobain fanboy or girl to be, you know, wanting to drop that kind of coin on this. I think this is definitely a better value if you find one used, or if you go with a retailer like Zounds, where you can split up the payments into, you know, either 6 or 12 easy payments, completely interest-free. Then you don't get hit with that that huge bill right away. It makes it a bit more palatable. But yeah, $2,000 for this guitar, even with the hard case, even with the DiMarzios. The hardware overall, with the exception of the vibrato, I would say is premium, but also not ideal for my personal specs. I already mentioned why I'm not a fan of the tune-o-matic or adjust-o-matic bridge. The tuners on this are nice, but $2,000 is crazy. The most that I feel like I would recommend spending on one of these is probably about $1,200. That's a bit more palatable, and definitely watch out if you can play one in store, then that would be the most ideal, so you can get a feel to see if it does have any kinds of issues like the ones I had mentioned I've run into very, very commonly. Otherwise, definitely buy from a retailer with a robust return policy. So Yeah, overall, I definitely feel like my impression of the Kurt Cobain Jaguar after having this one in hand has improved, and I would revise, based on this one, I would revise my ranking of this Jaguar to, I would say, a B. Again, that is a matter of personal taste. I'm not into the pickups. I'm not into the hardware. I'd say that if you were into these, I could see someone easily ranking this then as A. But for me personally, yeah, I'll upgrade it to a B. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video, folks. I hope you found it enjoyable as well as informative, especially if you've had your eyes on the Kurt Cobain Signature Jaguar. If you own this model, definitely let me know down in the comments. Do you love yours? Have you ended up selling yours off because you ran into issues? And if so, what were those issues? And if you still own it, what do you love about this as compared to your other guitars? I and other folks who watch this video would be curious to hear your thoughts and experiences. Now, if you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars buying tips.